Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Anand Maringenti. Some of you will know me, and the others will get to know me in the coming hour and a half. I just wanted to get a quick sense of who's there in the audience right now. So if you can all use the chat feature and respond to one question, which is how many of you live within 1 kilometer, within walking distance of a lake in Hyderabad? Yeah. If you do live within 1 kilometer walking distance of a lake in Hyderabad, please type in the chat box. I do. That'll help me get some sense of what's going on. Yeah. Oh, I think I do. I like that response. 2, 3 kilometers. I'm not sure if this is a glorified puddle. All right. Okay, so we do have a reasonable number of people. Um, Lake is no longer there. Yes. All right. So let me just quickly tell you why I asked that question, right? The word lake is actually something which is very new in Hyderabad. People don't realize it, but we have begun to use the word lake to refer to all the water bodies in Hyderabad in the last 25 years, not before that at all. Before that, we used to call them tanks. We began to call all of them lakes in the year 2000 when we had a World Lakes Conference in Hyderabad. And it seemed like a good idea to get into the international circuit by calling all our water bodies lakes. What's the difference between the two? Tanks are usually referred to are meant to refer to man-made water bodies, right? These are water bodies where you actually hold water for a specific purpose, which could be for agriculture, which could be for other drinking water purposes, etc. But these are all tanks, right? So all of Hyderabad, every single water body that you see is actually a tank, right? And it's important to keep that in mind when we are thinking about what's happening with water bodies. That's one thing I just wanted to flag. So keep that in mind, and we will come back to that repeatedly as we go along. The second thing that I wanted to flag is the question of what is this new organization called Hydra doing in Hyderabad. Now we keep getting, I've been in the last 10, 15 days, I've received so many calls, messages from journalists, etc., asking me to hold an opinion on what Hydra is doing, whether that is good, bad, whether we should expect something good that is happening. And I have repeatedly just said one thing, that in the long term, in the medium term, whatever the Hydra consequences may be, right now I'm just worried about one simple thing. If there are demolitions and the demolition debris is not immediately removed, one thing that we should all be worried about is the increase in dengue and chikungunya and other vector-borne diseases in Hyderabad, right? Because you have actually a very large number of buildings which are in the vicinity of water bodies, actually in the path of water bodies. And so when you demolish buildings and do not remove the debris immediately, what is going to happen is that you're going to get a lot of water accumulated there and they become breeding grounds. And once they become breeding grounds, you're going to have a lot of health related issues. Whether you call it good luck or misfortune, we don't have a very good system for monitoring diseases, monitoring disease burdens in our cities anywhere in India. During the lockdown, we did start a procedure for wastewater surveillance, but we are not actually seem to be doing anything much with that system. So we don't know exactly what is happening with our diseases in the city. So that's the second thing that I wanted to say, which is that the question of Hydra and the demolitions is an important one, but we need to understand the nitty-gritty, the details of what happens with demolitions, particularly in the vicinity of water bodies. There may be a legitimate reason, there may not be a legitimate reason. It could be a political thing, it could be an engineering thing, it could be a completely ecologically sensible thing to pull down those buildings, but we need to understand exactly what these water bodies mean. Yeah. So now quickly, how many of you are actually students of ecology, engineering, architecture, something or the other, which has had to do with water bodies of any kind? Irrigation, fishing, nobody at all. One, two, no, only one. Okay. Okay, so we do have a few people who do handle water in the urban, who do think about water bodies in the city in some way, right? But one of the things that you all have to understand, and this is something that took me a while to understand for myself, is this very simple fact that what we are dealing with is repurposed or actually completely ignored tank systems that were designed and built for an agrarian purpose in the past. The engineering purpose has completely changed now. And because their engineering purpose has changed, and we haven't rethought how to redesign or repurpose or re-engineer these water bodies, we have a lot of problems that we don't even know how to handle anymore. Yeah, so we have another set of issues here that we need to think a little bit more carefully about. And I want you all to hold on to these three different thoughts that I had just mentioned, right? Hold on to them, and then we will come back to them at different points of time. You will also be able to reflect on what I'm saying and then ask me questions and we can take it. Please take it that I'm actually not an expert on water bodies. I'm a geographer. I'm not even a physical geographer. I'm not a hydrologist. I'm a social scientist. And I try to understand what happens with physical geography. I try to understand what happens with engineering systems insofar as they have to do with people, right? My own life, my career began with trying to understand disasters of a very, very deeply engineering nature. But I'm concerned about what are the consequences of those disasters for people. How do they understand them? How do they prepare for them? And that's the kind of work that I have done for a very long time. Yeah, that's the background. So with that, what I'm trying to also tell you is that please do not take what I say to be the gospel truth. Work with me, ask questions, explore things on your own. If you live within a kilometer of a water body, I would strongly urge you to go and take a walk immediately after this talk around that water body. If you live far away, maybe you can drive up to that place, but it's a very good idea to try and walk around the water body, face the hurdles, find out where it is impossible to actually hug the perimeter of the water body and why it is difficult to hug the perimeter and what are the politics of that, right? Now, for example, Hussain Sagar, it is now possible for anyone to walk all around it, but it is only because we built a massive road through the full tank level called the Necklace Road. And that road actually, in many, many ways, completely killed the lake, right? I'm saying this, mark my words. I'm saying that if you are able to walk all around the water body, all around the lake without any obstruction, it doesn't mean that it's a great tank. It actually could mean that you've killed something in the lake, and that's why you're able to walk around. Now, it's possible, of course, that there are all kinds of other obstructions that do not allow you to walk around the water body. And those obstructions could be because there is a slum, because there is a waterfront water body, because there is some other road, some other destruction, something else has happened, but that's a different matter. We'll come to that in a bit. I want to quickly show you a series of maps so that you get some sense of what I'm talking about. Okay. At this point of time, Any quick questions? If you have any suggestions, if there are things that you want to think about or talk about that I'm not covering in this, please let me know. Type it in the chat box. I'll take a look at it and I will be able to respond to it. Please feel free to engage with me constantly through the chat box. I'm keeping an eye on what's happening in the chat box, so I will see. And if I miss out on something, then Teja and Anil and all of them will be also able to point out the thing that I'm missing out. So please feel free to type it in. Okay. I'm going to now start us off on a PowerPoint presentation that will give us some sense of what these water bodies in Hyderabad are. Mm, all right. So most of you would probably know that there is a river. The cities of Hyderabad has been built along the river, actually built around a river. The river is often romanticized. Many of us like to think that it was a great river, but it actually was not a great river ever. It's a small, tiny river. It's a seasonal river which had water only when there was heavy rains. And the river is less than 160 miles, 169 miles or something. It starts in a very beautiful location called Anantagiri Hills. You should go and see that place at some point of time if you have the interest. Beautiful forest. Anantagiri Hills were at one point of time generally thought of as treated as a place which is very good for all kinds of health problems. There was a tuberculosis sanitarium there. It's air. It was supposed to be very healthy for all kinds of illnesses. From Anantagiri Hills, it goes all the way via Hyderabad into Nalgonda district and then joins the Krishna River. It's a tributary of the Krishna River. Yeah. There are two streams actually. It's not just one river. It's Musi River, and then there's another part of it which is called Isa. So Isa and Musa, two streams that join and become the big Musi River in somewhere close to Hyderabad city, and then they go on to join the Krishna River. How does this actually work? You have the Golconda fort emerging in the 15th century, 16th century, and from then on, the city gradually grows. This is how it grows. From the Golconda Fort, you move towards the east, and then you start slowly building along the river on the northern banks. And then at some point of time, you start going towards the south, right? So Golconda, Karwan, and then you go to Charminar. Why does this particular stretch develop? It is basically because Golconda is connected to Bandar, Bandar meaning the port, which is Machilipatnam, with a very straightforward line. So if you actually walk from Golconda via Karwan and take that straight road, you will end up at Machilipatnam port, the Bandar, which is where a lot of trade used to happen in the 16th century. Yeah. So that's the route. And then at some point of time, the Golconda kings decide to build the city. And the first part of the building of the city happens around Charminar, which was built by, if some of you would know this history, built by Mir Momin, who was a Persian scholar who traveled to Hyderabad with a lot of books, because the town in which he was living was attacked. A lot of destruction had happened, and many people from that town actually took away their books and belongings and traveled to other places, and he landed up in Hyderabad. So Mir Momin's tomb is actually there even now in Sultan Shahi, in a place that is called Talab Katta. Right? And Talab Katta, if you all know what it means the tank bund. Talab is tank and Katta is bund. There is no tank now. There used to be a tank called Mir Jumla tank. If you see the old maps of Hyderabad, you will see Mir Jumla tank. And Mir Jumla is named after the commander of Golconda. That is the name of the tank. But now Mir Jumla tank is gone. Talab Katta name has remained because the bund used to be actively used for a long time. And then close to that Talab Katta is an old cemetery. And in the cemetery, which is called Mir Momin Ki Daira, is the grave of Mir Momin, who planned and built Hyderabad city. Yeah, the urban settlement was built around Charminar with Darushifa on one side, which was a big health resort kind of place. People came there because they thought that it was the gateway to health. And the rest of the town kind of built around that. There was a lot of trade happening. Diamond trade happened here. There was a lot of steel that was being manufactured here. Golconda steel was very, very well known. The city keeps growing slowly. And by around the 19th century, you begin to see the northern side of Hussain Sagar. Hussain Sagar was also built around the same time as when Hyderabad was actually built. Yeah, you have the British cantonment on the north side of the Hussain Sagar, and you see if you look at the maps, what you're seeing slowly is that you have nothing at all on the north, maybe small villages, and then slowly you see something emerging on the north, and then you see the north and south slowly gravitating towards each other, right? If you think about the bus route numbers in Hyderabad, you will realize something very interesting. All bus route numbers in Hyderabad, they start with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? They all start from Secunderabad and come to the south towards Charminar. That's how the bus system actually built, because people were traveling from the north to the south and south to the north. This is a city that fundamentally grew from the north to the south and north south to the north and connected with each other. In this system, you had in the middle Hussain Sagar, but Hussain Sagar was not the only thing that was there. Look at this map. This looks like like the network in a leaf, right? All of these are actually streams. They're streams that cross across the city, go into Hussain Sagar, then somewhere come down and further down land up in the Musi River, right? Where do all of these water bodies come from? What do they mean? Where do so many water bodies come from? The issue is that Hyderabad is located on the Deccan Plateau, and the Deccan Plateau is one which has a very, very uneven terrain, unlike the Gangetic Plain, and unlike any other place in the country, where if it rains, the water can go in multiple directions. It doesn't necessarily go in one single direction, which is what normally happens if you have a plain area. So if you have the hillocks all around the place, water that comes down, runs off in small streams in all directions until the water accumulates enough in one place, and from there it finds the next elevation point to which it can go. So that's what was happening here, right? You had lots and lots of places where water was accumulating first and then going down. And what began to happen was by the 13th, 14th centuries, the technology was around and available to build tanks, even around the first century AD. But really seriously, it began to build out only in the 13th, 14th centuries. And what you see is by 15th, 16th century, a lot of small tanks being built, managed, engineered to work to serve settled agriculture in the area. What does this agriculture, this lake system actually do? It serves the purpose of providing water for small amounts of agriculture. It is very different from what you see in, let's say, coastal Andhra. If you go to coastal Andhra, you have a big delta area in which you build one big reservoir, one big dam, and then you get water for everywhere. In the Hyderabad Deccan region, immediate vicinities of Hyderabad city, you have thousands of water bodies which are not ending up in one large reservoir. And around each water body, you have a small amount of agriculture taking place. It's a lot of small irrigation facilities, right? This is what the system was. What does that system actually look like in reality? Look at this. This is a map that we built Akash, who used to work with us and who's also there in this call, made this lovely map of an area called Serlingampalli, which many people cannot imagine it now to be what it is. There used to be a rocky patch right opposite the railway track. There used to be agriculture. There used to be two tanks, and the tanks were all interconnected. And now the interconnections between these tanks has completely disappeared because it is covered with a RCC roof so that it becomes a road. And then you have all the apartment complexes which have come close by. And those apartment complexes which have come up in the agricultural land, they let off a lot of sewage, and that sewage has to be then dealt with in some form. And that's what goes into the tanks, right? So when one of the commentators earlier was saying that maybe it's a glorified puddle, maybe it's not even just a glorified puddle, maybe it is a glorified cesspool. And that's basically because what has happened with a lot of our tanks is that we maybe we may not believe in science anywhere, but here we do have some faith in gravity to be taking care of all of our problems. What we do is to take all of our sewage from our apartments and throw it into the nearest nala and be assured that somehow that nala is going to take it away from us. But where will it take it away? It will take it all away into the nearest water body, which is the tank. But how are these tanks actually organized? Like I said, you have these accumulation points across many different contour levels, right? At different contour levels, that is at different heights on the land, there is water accumulating, and then it comes down to the next height, and then it goes to the next height. So at each of these different heights, you have a series of tanks, and the tanks are connected both vertically and horizontally. And that's what this system here is. The map that you're seeing here is basically one in which you have a water body which is horizontally connected to another water body at the same contour level, and vertically connected to another water body which is at a lower height than that from the mean sea level. That is the networked system, the chain tanks of Hyderabad, right? Now, in this chain tank system, what you have is a lot of wetlands, which are small pieces of land and interconnected. You have a lot of foreshore, which is where you have all of the very nutrient rich soil. And believe me, every year in October, when you get the birds from all over the northern hemisphere into Hyderabad, they're coming here for the food that is available in our tanks. And we have mostly been building these ring bunds around our tanks and killing the foreshore. And once the foreshore is gone, then that soil, which is filled with all kinds of nutrients, insects, worms, etc., is also dead. And once that is dead and the tank is filled with sewage, then migratory birds do not come to that place anymore, which is the reason why we've been seeing a gradual decline in the number of birds that are coming into Hyderabad. That's one part of the story. So this is one interesting map that we made. I mean, some of you know this Hyderabad Urban Lab makes a lot of maps. We love making maps. So at the time when the previous government was proposing to build a series of flyovers all around Hyderabad, the KBR Park, it struck us suddenly when we were looking at it that the KBR Park is one of the most interesting sites. See, Delhi has what is called the Delhi Ridge. There's one big dramatic ridge that passes through the city. Hyderabad actually has many different ridges all over the place, right? And that's what I was saying when I said that the Deccan Plateau is a very interesting place. KBR Park is the highest spot in that city. So if you're familiar with the Hyderabad city's geography, you let's say you go from Amirpet and go to KBR Park, you would have literally like climbed up Charminar. That's the height that you actually go up from Amirpet to KBR Park. It's right at the top of the Banjara Hills. It's a flat land, but it is not a land that is fully flat. It's pock marked in all kinds of ways. There's a large tank inside called Chiran Kunta, but the Chiran Kunta is fed by 23 other small ponds which are spread out across the park. Now, these small ponds sometimes empty into Chirankunta and then come further down south via Lotus Pond, Sheikhpet, Kotta Cheruvu, etc., and go into Durgam Cheruvu. Sometimes they go in other directions. If you are familiar with road number 5 on Banjara Hills, the road that comes straight down to somewhere behind the Jalgam Bengal Rao Park. That's one route to a lake called Enugulakunta. Enugulakunta is right inside the Jalgam Bengal Rao Park, and it is fed by water that comes from KBR Park. If you go to Film Nagar and go down to Gachibowli Road from there, right next to Whisper Valley, there is a nice large tank, and that tank is on Google Maps marked as Sheikhpet Kottacheru or Hakimpet Kunta. But whatever you call it, it's a lovely tank which received water from the hills of Film Nagar, which gets filled and then goes further down to Malkacheru and then to Durgam Cheru. That's the way in which the system basically worked. And this entire system can work only if we take care of the network, right? If you don't take care of the network, if you break that fabric, then the entire system will go for a toss. And that's what had begun to happen in our city. I want to show you another map. This is a tank system called Singada Kunta. If any of you are familiar with Banjara Hills Road number 1, you would know Taj Banjara Hotel, and right next to Taj Banjara Hotel, there's a tank. Right on here, you're seeing here this thing called 2012, and that 2012 marked on the map is basically the place where you have the Hamid Khan Kunta or Taj Banjara Lake. Because now we completely forgotten the original name of it, which was Hamid Khan Kunta. This is the other thing that you'll have to remember. All over Hyderabad, as we began to forget the fact that these were old tanks, which had very intriguing, interesting names. Names like Pujari Kunta, Mantrala Kunta, Komatoni Cheruvu, Kamuni Kunta, names which are associated with individuals, castes, which activities, with some kind of magic, some kind of birds, animals. There's an entire world of stories around the names of our water bodies. They've all been gradually turned into anglicized names that completely forget the fact that these are tanks with a certain cultural history and an engineering history. So the tank here is Hamid Khan Kunta, which is on the eastern side corner. And above that, just before you hit KBR Park, is what is called the Singada Kunta. Singada Kunta, in English, the word is water chestnut. Some of you may have seen water chestnuts which are roasted. They're like
Hi,
literally.
sorry, sir. I just want to ask you to make the presentation full screen because the maps are not visible.
Okay.
Yeah.
That better?
Yes, much better.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also there are some questions. Someone is
Hmm.
asking what a ring bund is.
Yeah.
So if you can.
I'll come to that.
Yeah.
I'll come to
Yeah.
that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is what it is, right? Singada Kunta. Now, there is no Singada Kunta at all anymore. Singada Kunta has now been completely turned into a slum. And over the blue line that you're seeing here, which brings water from the KBR Park all the way down to Taj Banjara Lake or Hamid Khan Kunta. Now, this has been completely covered by an RCC slab. And people are hoping that at some point of time it will turn into a proper road. This is right behind the police control room, the command center, right? And that's the story of one big water body which is now completely lost. What you see here is a lot of sewage and municipal solid waste coming into the Taj Banjara Lake. That's the story here. This is the story of the Sheikhpet Kottacheru or Hakim Baba Dargah Ka Kunta. This is the one that I was telling you about. You go via Film Nagar, you go via Whisper Valley, and you will come to this place. The pink color that you're seeing here is all of it slums. And these slums emerged in the last 20 years. Sometime in the mid 90s, they began and they really, really expanded very rapidly. And then above those slums, you have the more affluent houses. So if you see on the section diagram here on the right side, you will see that at the higher end, you have the apartments, the hospitals, etc. And then on the slope, you have the slums, and then you have the Hakim Pet, Kunta or Sheikh Pet, Kottacheru, etc. And then you have below that the one stretch, and then you have the high-rise buildings again. So you have high-rise buildings on both sides, and in the middle you have the hill slope, and then you have the tank. Now, this is what I mean by a ring bund. You see here the tank on the left side in the drawing here. What you find is that you don't know where the water is coming into this from, right? Very clearly, it has to be coming from somewhere on the hill slopes. But how does it even enter it? Because what you have done here is that the northern side of the tank is now completely turned into a road, right? In any tank, the most important part is this. On the south side, you have a bund which holds the water from spilling over. If you go to Hussain Sagar, the tank bund is actually a mud wall built about 400 years ago. That mud wall has been holding up all the water that is accumulating in a huge pit. And as the water keeps coming into the Hussain Sagar, it keeps expanding on the western side, which is where you have your Bibika Makta, you have the Raj Bhavan Road, all of that. It's supposed to expand all the way, and at some point of time, it is supposed to recede back into the Hussain Sagar, so that you have this open space which is not built upon, which is wetland, which is keychared mostly, and it is open land in which you can do a few things seasonally when there is no water. And I'll come to that in a moment, what actually used to happen. But that land is now mostly lost for most tanks. What we have done is to say that if we don't build a road, then there will be encroachments. So let's put a fixed, hard, rigid boundary on all sides of the tank and we build a road. Now, once you have built that road, water has no way of coming in, water has no way of expanding and receding, and it just kind of becomes very much like a pond or even a cement tank, and water is just held in it from wherever it comes, and then it is released from time to time. Mostly we don't even release it. So we have literally turned our tanks into cesspools. We have turned them into small cement pools into which the water comes from somewhere or the other. Right? That's what I mean by the ring bunding. The ring bunding is a huge ecological damage that we have done, while we may imagine that we have solved the problem of encroachments. Right? And this is the point that I want to come to when we are talking a little bit more about Hydra and what Hydra is doing. Yeah. So this part of the ring bund is, like I'm saying, where the problem is. It's the ring bund under which you also have a whole lot of sewage coming in. Right? Essentially, the way this health of a water body is maintained is this. By around June, July, you begin to get rains and the water begins to flow into the tank. By August, you have peak monsoon, you have a lot of water and it kind of expands into the buffer zone. And then it slowly starts going back as we move towards October. By around October, you are at full tank level, fully, properly maintained, and you know that your tank is full, right? That full tank level is what is hoped for by most farmers, most people in the villages in rural Telangana, because even if you don't get good rains next year, this full tank is sufficient to serve you well for the next couple of years. So you can actually have a couple of years of low, bad monsoon and you will still survive because your tank holds sufficient water. That's why the full tank level is very important. You fill it up to the full tank level and it is very carefully calibrated, right? Because to make sure that the water is held up to the full tank without breaching the bund, if you have excess water, then the bund can breach. What you do is to create a small bund which is slightly lower than the main bund. And on that lower bund is where all the excess water will flow out of. So if you think of Hussain Sagar, for example, the main bund is tank bund. And near the Ambedkar statue is where the surplus wear was. That is where the excess water would flow out of, and it would go by the GHMC office. If you remember sometime back in the last week or two, the MP Asaduddin Owaisi said that GHMC should think about where their own building is. This is what he meant, that it is built on the nala that goes out of the surplus ware of Hussain Sagar, right? And if we don't pay attention to it, it is going to get flooded at some point of time, like the MMRDA, the Mumbai Metropolitan Region Development Authority, got flooded in the Methi River flood in 2005. It's the regional planning authority, and it got completely flooded because it is sitting on the edge of of a stream that's going into the sea, and it was very badly located. This keeps happening to all our cities because we're not paying attention to what these water bodies are doing. So when I was saying a moment ago that migratory birds would come into that place where the ring bund is now, that the bund on the foreshore. The foreshore is where the water enters the tank from. And once you build that road, once you create a parallel bund there, that essentially makes sure that there's no more keychat, there's no more wetland, there is no more worms, and there's no more food for birds that come from far away to breed and to eat and then feast and then go back. So Hussain Sagar has lost a lot of water birds. A lot of other tanks also are experiencing something very similar. Okay. Is that clear? Or is there anything else that still needs to be clarified in this? We're okay? Okay. The other thing that I
Yeah.
want, the other thing I wanted you wanted to flag for you. This is a map. The image that you're seeing here is a tank called Afzal Sagar. Now, I'm guessing that most of the audience here are very young. They would probably not have seen the 1970 flood scare in Hyderabad. But it's an interesting story that many of us of my generation keep talking about, telling each other because it is such a funny story. Basically, what happened was in the month of September 1908, we had a big flood in the Musi River. And if you walk along the Musi River in the city, you will even now see these marble plaques, which are called HFL markers, high flood level markers. And the high flood level markers are there on mosques, on buildings. Even now they're there. And the water came right up to that level. So the memory of that flood, that devastating flood, is very alive in many people's lives, even until 70s. People would have been like 70 years old. They would have been 20 years old when the 10 years old when the Tugiani, the big flood in the Hyderabad city happened. So in 1970, we had a massive rain happening again in a very short period, like 1 day's time, and people were afraid that some kind of a flood would happen in the city. And unfortunately, when the Musi floodgates were being opened from the two Gandipet reservoirs, the officers forgot to alert people beforehand, and they started suddenly announcing along the Musi River that Pani aa raha hai, bhago yahan se. And that Pani aa raha hai, bhago, given the terrain of Hyderabad city, could mean that water is coming from anywhere at all in the city. So essentially, in like a half an hour's time, the word spread across the city that from somewhere we are getting flooded. Nobody knew where we were getting flooded from, and people started running. People started throwing things, bundled their gold and babies and all kinds of valuable things, and threw them into passing vehicles, imagining that if they will die, at least the gold will be safe with the baby will be saved, things like that. One of the things that happened after this was that this big tank called Afzal Sagar, which is right behind the Nampally railway station, that tank got completely breached because people thought that now this is a risk, it's too scary, we shouldn't be uh, surviving within this space. And they built a huge colony there. There are lots of housing, there are lots of slums in the area, and they're all called Afzal Sagar slums. But if you walk along that road, you will see the Katta Maisamma temple, right? And Katta is Bund in Telugu, and Maisamma is the goddess who supervises the Bund. So one of the things that I like telling people in Hyderabad is that go anywhere in Hyderabad city and ask for Kattamaisama temple, and you're sure to find a tank or the memory of a tank right below that Kattamaisama, because she is the goddess who would control and regulate the flow of water. She is the one who will protect the tank from breaching, all of that. And everywhere you will have them. So Hussain Sagar has one Kattamaisama temple, Durgam Cheruvu would have one Kattamaisama temple, Nagamaya Kunta will have one Kattamaisama temple. You will find these Kattamaisama temples everywhere. So look for Kattamaisama temples wherever you go. Yeah. This is what I was saying. The ring bund edge. When you don't have that bund, what you have is what you see here marked as littoral zone. That littoral zone is the place where you have slightly submerged plants in water. You have floating plants. You have plants that come out of the water. This is where you have all of the excess water, which can kind of withdraw into the tank. The water line can withdraw into the tank. And this is where you will have all kinds of new life emerging. Fish lay eggs here. Birds come and look for food here. And what we have done is that in this littoral zone or on the edge of this littoral zone, we have built roads. And that makes it impossible for water to come into the tanks anymore, right? The word for this littoral zone in Telugu is Sikham Bhumi. And this is where we are coming to the story of the Hydra. Sikham is land within the full tank level, which is this littoral zone, which is full of all of these nutrients, which historically is land that gets exposed seasonally, but belongs to the tank. It doesn't belong to anybody. It cannot be owned by anyone. Nobody can build anything there. Nobody should be allowed to build anything there because it belongs to the water. It belongs to the birds. It belongs to the worms. It belongs to the fish. Now, the way in which the government during the Nizam's time dealt with some of these littoral zones was to say that if there are poor people who need some kind of a resource to make a living, then this land that gets exposed seasonally can be given to them seasonally for some kind of a use right. So you want to grow some food, you want to cultivate something there, I will allow you to do that. You pay a small tax. You may even create a small infrastructure, but end of the season, remove that temporary infrastructure and clear out and walk out. And you don't have a permanent long-term right on this. That document was called Ek Fasal Patta. Now, all around in Hyderabad, you will find people who held these Ek Fasal Pattas and all of the tanks. The idea was simply that you are someone who is in need of a productive resource. You don't own land. So you get this permission to do one single crop and you get some benefits out of it. And then you take care of it in some kind of a stewarding role and you walk out of it. What began to happen by the 50s and 60s is that, number one, the new administrations completely forgot about how to manage these kinds of things, because we now only understand regular full-fledged property rights and we don't understand how these flexible systems can actually be managed by the governments, because it requires a lot of careful work and governments have lost the ability to do that kind of careful work. Result is that gradually over a period of time, with the land use patterns changing, agricultural land turning into real estate, people who had these ek fasal pattas figured that it's useful in some ways to try and turn these pattas into some kind of a real estate value. So when you see a lot of people building in the full tank level, they're actually encashing a right that was given to them at some point of time by the government. They're not doing anything fully legal, but they are also not doing anything completely immoral. They're basically saying that, look, this tank was our sustenance, and now we're going to get some one last thing out of this, and we're going to build. But of course, they will not be the ones who will be building. So they hand over the documents to somebody else, and that somebody else builds. The second type of people who enter into these kinds of places very often is the people who are very poor, and somebody who has figured that this land is no longer really useful for agriculture or is not serving an ecological purpose completely occupies it and then divides it and subdivides it and hands it over into people's for small plots. So what you see all around our water bodies now is Kabristans, dargahs, temples, because even washermen, in order to make some claim, build a small temple, right? So temples, then you have people building slums, and then you have people trading some of the rights that they have and handing them over to some big builders. All kinds of transactions have happened over the last 60, 70, 80 years. And that's the space into which Hydra is now stepping in, right? Now, is this a good thing? Yes, it's a good thing if you're going to actually follow it up with a very careful management plan. If we don't come up with a carefully drawn up management plan, then this is going to be a one-time affair, and then it will be primarily a policing type of work and not a engineering or a social approach. So what I would strongly argue for is that Hydra's work needs to be supported. It has to be modified, moderated. In some ways, it should be made much more sensitive and sensible to people's needs as of now. So the revenue department has to be involved in it. The municipal department has to be involved in it. Community organizations have to be involved in it and figuring out what is the solution. That's not an easy thing to do, right? I mean, we can say very easily that everybody should talk to each other. Unfortunately, in cities like Hyderabad, as in many other cities in India, you always have hidden actors, you have hidden stakeholders. We don't know exactly what is going on, and people don't necessarily all of them come to the table to discuss things. So when that open discussion doesn't happen, when the democracy is not fully open as we expect it to be or imagine it to be, then you're going to have a complete mess at the end of any good attempt. So I would say at this point of time that the one possibility that this could actually lead to is that in the next 1 or 2 years, we're going to see at least some symbolic attempts being made in some key locations to clear up things and nothing more. Maybe it could actually lead to a lot of new conversations and new debates, because all of these water bodies are actually capable of yielding a lot of nature education. A lot of nature-based solutions are possible in these places. Many of these things cannot be solved by huge engineering attempts. For example, the way in which we have been dealing with sewage is to primarily take it over 3, 4, 5 kilometers using pipelines and then putting it into some kind of a STP. That's a huge energy consumption, and very often you have small pieces of land, 300 houses, 400 houses illegally built, and they cannot actually connect to the ring mains, which is the pipeline that takes it all the way to the STP. And when they cannot do that, the only place where it can go is into the nearest water body. So you take something like Miralam tank, there are 53 inlets of sewage into it. Even as you have a 42 mld STP at one end, you have a 5 mld STP at one end, and they are not even receiving 10 mld altogether because the pipelining system is not working properly. But on the other hand, you take something like Khajaguda Lake, which was built for 7 mld, is now actually receiving 27 mld, and the STP cannot handle it. So it's basically letting it all pass into the lake by bypassing the STP completely. So you have a peculiar situation across our city, which is blessed with this wonderful system of hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of lakes, and yet all of them have turned into cesspools and puddles and very dangerous breeding grounds for all kinds of pathogens. And that's where we'll have to struggle with how to solve them. So what would I say is a way of dealing with all of this? I'm just going to shut off this now. One way to deal with all of this is to say that um, we need to become refamiliarized with our water bodies, which is why I was saying that please immediately after this talk, go and take a walk around the water body. You will see fish, you will see dragonflies, you will see mosquitoes, you will see wetlands, you will see fish, you will see all kinds of things. Try and figure out what we can do with them. We have had several generations of activists in the city. Each of them has done something very, very wonderful. Each of them has built a lovely volume of knowledge around these water bodies. But now it's time a completely new approach is also brought in, because we now have the possibility of reclaiming a lot of knowledge that is lost in maps, in texts, and so on, because these archives are becoming easily available to us. And we have a lot of young people who now have the desire to walk. I mean, I've never seen this kind of energy around walking, adventures, hiking, trekking in any city as I'm seeing now in Hyderabad or in Bangalore or in Delhi. I mean, Hyderabad in 2011, 12, when the night started the Greater Hyderabad Adventure Club, 12,000 members. That's huge. So if you have so many people who are willing to walk, trek, cycle, and we should turn it all into a great educational opportunity. Um, we do have a large number of people asking for these ring bunds, and there's a reason for that, which is that if the tank is not serving agricultural purpose, if we don't understand the agricultural purpose and the engineering of it and the cultural values, then what are we looking for? We are basically looking for some way of dealing with our lifestyle diseases, mostly diabetes, because diabetics need a place to walk, and we are all looking for places where we can have continuous unobstructed walks. That's the reason why there has been a lot of push for protecting water bodies, which is not bad at all. I have no objection to it, but it has to be much more than that. We need to be understanding that Buffalo Lake in University of Hyderabad was Barlakunta, or the lake in which actually water buffaloes were washed not so long ago. Yeah, that's what these tanks are about. They have a very, very muddy teacher-filled history, and we should learn to live with that. So I'm going to stop here. We have another half an hour, and I'm very happy to answer any questions, suggestions, anything that you want to suggest. We are very happy to work with you. We have Nivedita here, who um, is a nature educator who's just begun to work with us. We have Meghna here, who's been trying to build some expertise on disaster risk mitigation in Hyderabad, knowing that this is a city that is literally swimming in all kinds of pathogens all the time. You have Akash, who actually made that map, which I showed you earlier. You have Shabari, who makes digital maps. And then we have Teja, who will also jump in very soon to tell you about what we are planning to do next week, which is the GIS workshop on how to make maps that will tell us where the so-called encroachments are. And I'm very cautious when I call them encroachments, because I know that there are encroachments, definitely, but they are encroachments in a very complex sense. It's not just about building something where you should not be building, but building the wrong thing in the wrong place. Right? This is land where you should not be building anything that obstructs the flow of water, that obstructs the absorption of water. You take care of those two things, you build as much as you want. I don't care. And that's what the Nizam government did, right? You grow as much food as you want. Just make sure that you don't build anything permanent there that is going to stop the water from coming into the lake, and make sure that you remove anything that you put in that place. That's the issue. If we don't take care of that, then removing encroachments is not going to get us anywhere at all. It's just going to be a satisfaction that we have won morally in some one-upmanship, but it's not going to help us. That's it. So I'm going to stop here, taking a breath, and I'm happy to answer. Meghna, are there any questions that I have to answer?
Yeah, there are a few questions in the chat box.
Yeah.
Okay, let me read one of them. So there's a question that asks, are these people who build or work in high-tech city? I think this is in relation to the people living near Hakimpet Lake. I'm not sure. Aru, if you want to expand on that question.
Yeah. Arvik, can you explain that question a little bit more?
Hey, hi. So I was asking that you were talking about the people in the slums between Film Nagar and Gachibowli. So
Mhm.
you said that these developed over the last 20 years or so. So I was
Yeah.
wondering if most of the people there are people who work in high tech city or
Film industry, actually.
oh, okay. Right,
Many of them
right.
have connections to the film industry. Some of them are in construction. Some of the houses were actually built by the government for low income families. You should walk around those houses. They are actually, some of those lanes are so beautiful. With all of the crowdedness, with all of the ugliness that is done, with all of the ecological damage that has been done. In the end, there are so many points on those hills that are so beautiful. You can stop at one place and actually see Golconda all the way through. You can stop in one place and see the stairs going down almost like in an Italian village going down to the Como Lake. It's as beautiful as that. So I'm saying at some level that we can call all of them encroachment. They are in some ways, but they can also be managed if we are sensitive and if we care for it.
Okay, so the next question, Kalki asked, why has government bodies over the years been unable to change their approaches, and is there an awakening or some kind of hope that they would do a course correction with their approach to urban development?
That's a very interesting question, and my answer is a complex one. I was once doing a workshop with urban planners who work in the government, and at the end of it, they said, "So you're telling us things that you should have told us 30 years ago. We never thought that the land is uneven. We took it for granted that land is flat, and that's why I often say that we have probably one of the biggest flat Earth societies because, as far as property is concerned, we treat land as flat. Property maps don't show elevation, they don't show unevenness, etc., right? So basically what we have done is to completely forget that the land is uneven, the soil is of very different kinds, groundwater tables are very different in each part of the city. There's so many factors here that are very different, and each of them is a complex one. Now, did people know all of this at one point of time? Of course they knew. I mean, that's the reason why I'm able to talk about it, right? But what has happened is that because the agrarian context is gone, you're no longer paying attention to soil type, soil quality, soil moisture. You're no longer paying attention to where is the water going to come from, where is the water going to drain out of, right? What we have done is in that place, when we say that we are urbanizing, we are essentially thinking of that land as a flat surface. And on that flat surface, we are putting a grid which is supposed to give us some kind of an efficiency of services, right? You want to run let's say an HMW SSB, government run water supply pipeline. You want a straight road. But if you are a farmer and you're trying to get water from a pond into your farm, then you're not looking for a straight pipeline. You're looking for some way of making gravity work in your favor to let the water come into your land in some easy way, right? This is the big difference. When we urbanize, when we turn land into property, we forget the simple material facts about water. This is the reason why I'm saying go to the tank. Go to the tank, look at the trees, look at the birds, look at the bird shit that you see all around, look at the frogs, look at the small signs and details of everything that is happening around it, because that's what this is about. And government officers don't have the time, patience, training, sensibility to deal with that. So essentially what has happened is that over a period of time, we began to slowly replace everything with systems that work from a distance. And we don't have any sense of what is local right next door and so on. So many people don't know how far they are from the water body. And that's
I have a follow-up question. I mean, yeah, I have a follow-up question. Now,
yes.
with respect to a lot of IoTs and data collection happening in terms of, let's just say, using drones for aerial surveying and to generate maps that are much more, what do you call, accurate in terms of elevations and all that.
Yeah,
Do you think those kind of solutions are a way forward in trying to
they
mitigate
could
the
be.
problems that it could
No,
be?
they
But
could. They could be. Wait,
are
let me,
the questions, anybody exploring this? Is there a conversation around this?
yeah, let me qualify that. They could be. I mean, that's precisely the reason why we are doing the workshop next week, where we are saying that let's take a look at the GIS maps and see how we can place them, the full tank level maps, on the base map of Google Maps, right? I'll tell you why it could and it cannot also. Just a couple of weeks ago, one of my friends who actually worked with me for many years in Hyderabad Urban Lab and is now working in Delhi, was telling me about a meeting that he attended in Calcutta and in Guwahati. And the demand there was that let's try and figure out if we can build an IoT system for telling us when the Nala gets clogged, right? And this friend was basically saying that, look, you have to have somebody to clean the Nala on a daily basis because there is garbage getting piled up on it on a daily basis. If you don't do that, you have an IoT system that is going to alert you that it has gotten filled up. It's going to go off every day, not going to go off once in 2 months, right? And you don't need to be reminded every day to do something simple, which is to remove the garbage, municipal solid waste. You just have to do it. That's all. So I'm
Better
saying,
idea. Don't put garbage. I mean,
yeah, sure. You shouldn't put garbage in it, but even in our older towns, you will know that nalas, that is grey water, is never just water, right? It always comes with some solid material in it. So if you go to any small town, even now, you will see that every morning there's a guy who walks along all the street side nalas and removes a small amount of solid waste and puts it aside. And then there's somebody who comes along with a wheelbarrow and walks away with it, right? That's a system that you have to have. It has to work. So, so all of our new technology, if it is telling us that, look, you can afford to be lazy, you don't have to know things, I will know things for you, then we are making a mistake. It's like one of the most horrifying experiences I've had was with this municipal corporation where the commissioner was telling me that, look, I'm thinking of putting putting chips inside dogs which are roaming around the mortuary in the hospital because they're biting off flesh from the dead bodies. They are stealing infants' dead bodies. So I want to put chips inside dogs' heads as part of the smart city plan, so that I will know where the dogs are at any given point of time, right? And of course, I was horrified. I mean, anybody should be horrified at an idea like that, because what you need to do is to make sure that dogs don't come to the mortuary. You don't put chips inside
yeah,
dogs to be able to tell that something is going wrong, right?
I get your point.
That's what
Yeah.
I meant. That sometimes these technological fantasies can be really dumb and stupid,
Yeah.
and actually
Yeah.
have all kinds of
Uh,
dystopian outcomes.
just to add here, like I think Bangalore, many of the lakes they're using water level sensors and water quality sensors, IoT devices to
Yeah.
map the. So maybe is that happening in Hyderabad as well?
No, it's not yet happening. There has been an attempt to do that. And from what I hear from Bangalore, that system is working reasonably well.
Yes.
But even in Bangalore and in Hyderabad, we all know that there is one end to this, which is something that we don't pay much attention to, which is basically that we have a difficulty in imagining communities and people, right? We imagine what governments can do. We imagine what companies can do, right? We sometimes can imagine what NGOs can do. But very often people are able to solve problems on their own and they're very intelligent and smart. Like, for example, in the 2020 flood that we had in Hyderabad, one of the first people to respond to the floods were the Bihari migrant workers. They said, look, we know how this works. And they basically got a whole lot of plastic drums, tied them together and built rafts and started rescuing people. There were people who were stranded and were not able to, were too scared to go and get food and water. These guys were the ones who were going and bringing things for them, right? So it's really important for us to go back to our communities, go back to our people, and ask them what they know about floods, what they know about lakes, because they do know a lot. They do know how to deal with them. There are a lot of people who don't know, but if you look around, you will find people who know and whose knowledge needs to be leveraged.
So like Bangalore has a lot of community groups around lakes. So
Yeah.
similar can be done for Hyderabad. People around lakes can have some community groups and
Yes. There is a slight difference between the history of this in Hyderabad and in Bangalore. Bangalore has been a little more successful in creating middle class property owning lake protection committees than Hyderabad. Hyderabad has not been that successful, but I think we are moving there. Part of the reason why I'm saying this is that I used to be kind of skeptical about middle class property owning people looking after water bodies. I would think that, you know, they're just basically looking out for their own property values. But in the end, I'm now kind of convinced that even that's good. You need to do something, right? You don't have the fishermen to look after the tank and fish anymore. So people who own property there will have to do it, which is the reason why I'm saying that this group of people to look after these tanks, you need some kind of a conversation with the people who looked after these earlier, some kind of an understanding of how the system worked, so that you can do more innovative work at this point. There are
yes.
actually quite a
How
few
do we make that
in Hyderabad.
conversation happen between the new property owners, the older fishermen? I mean, do you even notice them? Like, for example, when I look out my window, I often see a shepherd going around with a lot of goats and
Yeah,
pigs out there.
yeah.
But is the association, the colony association that I'm living in, having a conversation with him to
Yeah.
understand that conversation? I do not know where it is happening and who is supposed to enable it at what point.
It's not happening. There are individuals who are trying to figure out, to understand, and so on. And sometimes they turn into projects. Often they don't turn into projects at all. You see, the thing is that for civil society efforts of this kind to take off and build into anything, you need money, resources, some ability to work with the government. You need dedicated time to be given. I mean, it's good that now you have a lot of people who have 2 days weekly off. So people can actually put time into doing these things. You do, and we can build neighborhood level knowledge systems, networks, and so on. But it's a lot of hard work. It needs to be done. We do have a few people in Hyderabad who have done that. For example, Neknampur Lake, some really interesting work has happened. Kapra Lake, some really interesting work has happened. Kalpana Ramesh has done some really interesting work. Each is a very different kind of experimentation, different kind of approach, different kinds of work. There's of course the older generation of work, which has all been around making sure that there is a legal fight going on constantly to remove encroachments. That has also been there. Meghna, you were saying something?
No, somebody just pointed out, Sneha just pointed out that uh, now that they have the vocabulary, the Buffalo Lake in HCU is also being ring bundled. And there's
Yeah.
been a discussion around it where like HCU is trying to do lakefront development around the Buffalo Lake, and also a way to deploy surveillance tech.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that's one thing.
Yeah.
And
So the intervention there has to be that even if that ring bundling is happening, are there ways in which you can make design interventions into making sure that it doesn't actually destroy what is there? Right. And that kind of experience is available in the country. There are small attempts here, there, and many other places. And one of the things that we have been trying to push for constantly at HUL is that we need small, real, local attempts to be made to fix things. You know, we generally tend not to pay much attention to repair as a philosophy. And I think that our cities need a lot of repair work. We do like to run after shiny things, which are greenfield projects, but 90% of our cities, 90% of our urban population still lives in cities which are brown and they need to be repaired. And that includes our water bodies, our banyan trees, our egrets, or all kinds of things. By the way, one of the funny things that I realized in Hyderabad is that there's a big growth in egret population along the nalas, and these are egrets that actually ride on buffalo backs. And I used to wonder why. Why is it that this is happening? And then I found out from someone who has been watching them very closely. Egrets have a straight beak. They can't actually poke into mud and pull out worms. They don't have a hook. So what they do is to ride on buffaloes, and as buffaloes walk, they turn over the mud, and out of that the food comes out, and the birds just go and get it. Apparently, what's happening is that with a lot of these nalas, the food is already right at the top. It doesn't have to be turned up by buffaloes. That's why egret population along nalas has begun to grow, at least in places where the nala has not been covered by an RCC roof. So all kinds of strange, perverse things are happening all around us, and I think that it's going to be it's really fun and important and necessary for us to look for them. Someone was saying that Malkacheru is a miracle. It's a miracle, but it's a real estate miracle as well, right? Aparna people put a lot of money into it and made it happen. And in many places in Hyderabad, that is not going to happen because there's no big real estate interest. So in such places, we will have to find smaller solutions, easier solutions. Community level options will have to really explore. And it can happen if we all form, and my belief has always been that we need to first form study groups. We need to learn to observe, learn to take notes, learn to enjoy whatever little is there, and then the motivation to do something bigger will come out of that.
I'll just quickly go to other questions. Vikram has asked, has Hydra removed any debris?
No, Hydra has not yet removed any of the debris. They said that they will, but this is the thing that you all have to understand. Debris removal is a contract by itself. So you have to call for tenders, people have to bid, and then you have to give them the contract. It's going to cost money, and that just hasn't been done till now.
I just wanted to ask, like GHMC has CND waste management unit, so they have been
They,
like hired.
there's a unit,
Ramp.
and the unit is not big enough to handle all of this. They usually outsource it. They connect they give it on a contract. It's
Yeah,
not
it's been
permanent
given to
staff.
Ramkey, I think. It's given to
Yeah,
Ramkey, and
yeah.
so they
So,
will not take
but
this
this is
up.
large, right? These are big
Oh,
ones.
okay.
This is a very different kind of thing. So it has to be a separate contract. It cannot be done on the same rates.
Okay.
Nivedita, you were saying something?
Yeah, I was just saying that how would if others would be interested, I could try to set up a reading group around the lakes in Hyderabad. So maybe after the meeting over the coming week, if folks are interested, you could text on the chat. I could drop emails and we could build a reading circle around lake ecology and then look at urban lake ecologies. If that makes sense.
That's a lovely idea. But how will you connect with people? Are you going to put out a post on Insta again?
So that's what I was thinking. I was asking. We will have everyone's contacts from the registration form, right?
Oh,
So I
yes,
could
right.
drop in emails, and I was just speaking out loud here so that I could see in the chat box if people are interested, and then we could set up something. Yeah.
Yeah, so if anyone is interested, just say yes in the chat box. So we'll be able
Yeah,
to
it
build it.
seems like people are interested. So yeah, because I was so interested in what Surabhi's work was, and it would be nice to continue the conversation with the other folks over time. Yeah.
Amazing. All right, so it's now 11:20. Unless we have any other questions, and please feel free to continue to drop in questions. But I want to
Actually, I
now.
had a question.
Yeah.
Hi. We were talking about motivating and mobilizing people on the ground, and study group was an option that you suggested. What from from my understanding so far, please correct me if I'm wrong. Will playbooks help? Like a concept of a playbook, like something let's just say an association people or resident association people can just refer to see if their nearest lake that can be protected, what are the steps that they have to follow, what is
I,
the scientific or local approach that they can, because often
yes.
the problem is lack of there might be motivation but they may not know how to go about it.
Correct. Totally. So one of the things that I have been a big advocate of for a long time is that we should build small interpretation centers around every water body. And one challenge is that, like, you don't have land for building sewage treatment plants except inside the tank. There is no land available for building an interpretation center near water bodies, right? So one of the things that Nivedita has actually been also pushing for a little bit is to try and see if we can build some sort of a mobile interpretation center. And by interpretation center, what we simply mean is that you have a water body, there's some history, there's some observations that can be made around that. You can create some kind of an activity, storytelling, some kind of a possibility of people offering walks around it. Those kinds of activities can slowly be built around that, right? And I mean, we do it as and when we can. I mean, this is not our main work. We do a lot of other things, but in the middle of it, we also do walks every now and then. Last walk we did was around Durgam Chirgu on the World Wetlands Day. But I think it's great fun to just keep organizing walks around water bodies, because people then learn a lot from each other. People notice things, and you can always invite other people who know things to walk along with you.